Subscribe our YouTube channel for latest material and PTE tips and tricks. Best luck for your exam.
Brownie considers itself the world center of wine. But there may be some red faces in Burgundy today, because a study provides more evidence that the techniques for turning grapes into a bottle of wine may have come over from what today is Italy. The research is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Archaeologists have found containers, called amphoras, at sites along the French coast. The 2,500-year-old vessels had characteristics of wine bottles used by the Etruscans in what's now Italy. But did these amphoras actually contain wine? Researchers looked at 13 Etruscan amphoras that had been executed whole in the French coastal town of Latera, an ancient import-export center. They also examined a limestone platform that looked to have been a wine or olive press. Based on tropical analyses, it's likely that the amphoras contained wine. And the press did not start being used on grapes until decades after the amphoras arrived. These artifacts imply that the Gallic locals first had their wine shipped in and later began the development of their own winemaking techniques, probably using vases also transplanted into the area. Looks like French wine, like Napoleon, is really an Italian import.
It's sad but true, the moon is not made of cheese. But it still holds some fascinating surprises. Because a recent study finds that the moon harbors more water than was previously thought, and that this lunar H2O appears to hail from the same source as the water on Earth. That's according to work published online, in the journal Science Express. The moon is thought to have formed by a violent collision between a spacefaring rocky body and the protoplanet Earth. It was also assumed that the heat of this impact would have caused any water, or its constituent elements, to boil off into space, leaving the baby moon high and dry. But recent studies have found that samples of volcanic glass, brought back from the moon on the Apollo missions, contain as much water as magma found here on Earth. Now, by examining the isotopic composition of that water, researchers have found that it matches that of meteorites, the likes of which also delivered Earth its first drink. The simplest explanation is that our planet was all wet before the impact that gave rise to its satellite. Next mystery to unravel: how did the moon manage to maintain that moisture?
Social media, it can help you keep up with friends, stay on top of the news, and maybe even fit into your skinny jeans. Because a study shows that using Twitter can help people lose weight. The results appear in the journal Translational Behavioral Medicine. Now, before you go thinking you can just tweet yourself to a size 2, the volunteers in the study were taking part in a media-assisted weight loss program. For 6 months, 96 overweight participants tuned into weekly podcasts about nutrition and exercise. In addition, half of them made use of mobile apps to track calories and physical activity, and to keep other folks in the study apprised of their progress. On the whole, participants reduced their body weight by about 3%. But those who used Twitter lost even more, another 0.5% body weight for every 10 times they tweeted. Some tweets offered emotional support, but many were simply informative. Like, avoided the pastries at this morning's meeting. But I did have a skim mocha without whipped cream. Such confessional tweeting may help dieters stay honest. Or at least keep their fingers occupied and out of the cookie jar. One reason Americans have such a huge weight problem? Our dishware. When faced with a bigger plate, people are inclined to heap on, and consume, more food. And plate sizes, waistlines, have expanded. But what about color? If plate area can change serving size, could we also trick ourselves into eating less by changing the color of those dishes? Cornell eating behavior expert Brian Wansink enlisted 60 unsuspecting adults to find out. Half of those attending a buffet lunch were assigned to a line with only white Alfredo sauce-coated pasta, and the other half were ushered to the line with only red marinara sauce pasta. Folks in each line were randomly given a red or white plate. Those with plates that matched the color of their food helped themselves to much more than those who had plates of another color. The findings are in the Journal of Consumer Research. So next time you're buying dishes, remember that it's not just size that matters.
That Easter Bunny's gifts of chocolate may taste sweet, but they leave your attitude sour. Because a study finds that if you're in a crummy mood to begin with, unhealthy eating can leave you feeling even worse. Researchers had 131 women record their moods and eating habits each day for a week. The researchers wanted to limit the study to the effect of bad eating on the otherwise healthy, so although the subjects admitted to having unhealthy eating habits, no one had a diagnosed eating disorder. And an analysis of the food and mood diaries resulting from the week of the study found that if women were feeling low, anxious, sad or angry, eating too much or too little made that mood even worse. Interestingly though, if the women were in a good mood to begin with, there was no change in their mood after eating too much or too little. The researchers note that we often eat to comfort ourselves or try to remedy a bad mood, but this study shows that such eating for consolation may make us feel even worse. Something to keep in mind when you find yourself reaching for the second ear of the chocolate bunny.
Being buried by ice would seem like a death sentence. But some moss recently freed from the deep freeze after 4 centuries appears to be doing just fine. That's according to a report in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Ice sheets the world over are melting back, and that's particularly true in the Arctic. The meltdown is picking up pace, too. As the ice retreats, it uncovers the foliage it had entombed. Researchers gathered a sample of such flora in the Canadian territory of Nunavut to gauge its condition. Carbon dating showed that the vegetation had not seen the sun since at least near the start of the Little Ice Age, some 400 years ago. Back in the lab's friendlier confines, the moss picked up where they'd left off. The collected sample spread out into a vibrant green blanket. Admittedly, cryopreservation is a technique for keeping a wide variety of living cells and tissue in stasis, so the moss survival may not be such a surprise. Plus, moss are pretty hardy, with the ability to withstand extreme conditions. Nevertheless, this resurrection after ice entombment displays the resiliency of some life as conditions change. But restoring the disappearing ice itself, well, that's a far trickier matter.
There's an old-timer in the neighborhood, and it's got a story to tell. A new study of a relatively nearby star shows that it's almost as old as the Big Bang itself. The star HD 140,283 lies about 190 light-years away in the constellation Libra. Astronomers have long known that it's ancient, because it contains mostly hydrogen and helium, which were present at the dawn of the universe, and few of the heavy elements that were forged later in stellar furnaces. With the Hubble Space Telescope, researchers have now pinned down the distance to HD 140,283, which allowed them to determine how bright the star is. Along with the chemical composition of the star, The newly derived stellar properties allowed for a new age estimate. The study of HD 140,283, in the Astrophysical Journal Letters found that the star is 14.46 billion years old. But the entire universe, as you may heard, is only 13.77 billion years old. The two age estimates aren't actually in conflict, because there's always some uncertainty. The full age estimate is thus 14.46 billion years plus or minus 800 million years. Put your money on the minus.